Yes, we can now speak to Jacob Rees-Mogg, as promised, who's in central London and has just finished giving his speech. Welcome to the programme, Jacob Rees-Mogg. What were you getting at with your analogy about Japanese soldiers in World War II?
Well, you just needed to listen to Lord Patten, who is an immensely distinguished figure. And what he was saying was basically that the result of the referendum should be overturned and that we should remain in the single market and the customs union. That isn't what people voted for. It isn't what was put in the manifestos for the election last year. And I'm glad to say it isn't government policy. So I think that they are expecting something to be happening that is not happening.
Right. I mean, you've also said reneging on Brexit would be like Suez, a national humiliation based on lies. Do you really mean that?
Oh, I very much mean that. I think the nation has spoken. It has decided that it wants to have its own independent future. And this has been a great democratic event for us, and a very exciting one, that we have shown that we are willing to go our own way. If this were undermined by subterfuge, by people saying they don't really want to reverse it when in fact they do, then that would indeed be a national humiliation. The United Kingdom is not Denmark or Ireland, who, when they voted against the European Union, were told to vote again until they gave the right answer. Just to be treated in that way would be denying the greatness and the standing of our country.
Right. I mean, Chris Patten, you may have heard, said your views as an 8-year-old were eccentric, and they still are, and they haven't changed as a 48-year-old. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't remember discussing the European Union with Lord Patten when I was 8, though I have indeed known him a long time. What I would say to his lordship is that when he was governor of Hong Kong, I greatly supported him in trying to bring democracy to Hong Kong. It is a great sadness that he doesn't want democracy in the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, he thinks he and his fellow Panjandrums know best, and that we should have done what we were told in the referendum.
Right.
I agree with him that democracy is a good thing. He thought it was right in Hong Kong, and I think it's right in the United Kingdom.
Right. But, I mean, he says the reason that he is fighting the idea of coming out of the single market and the customs union is because all the talk of new trade deals has been vastly exaggerated. You will never be able to make up that amount of trade from the loss of the deal with the EU, which we now know we are going to lose some access because Theresa May has said it. He says the closest the government has come to a free trade deal is the checkout at Waitrose. Is that true?
No, it's not true at all. And I must confess, I thought his tone was rather condescending when he said that he knew so much more than the current Secretary of State for International Trade. Liam Fox has been concentrating on this, travelling the world discussing this with our friends and allies since he was appointed, and discovers that there is a great openness to trade deals, and these can be done very quickly. The deal between Australia and the United States was done in under a year and led to a very significant increase in trade between Australia and the United States.
Right.
So not only can these deals be done quickly if there's a will, but they also lead to considerable expansions in trade. So there's great opportunity there.
Right, but I mean, even according to the famous leaked civil service analysis, which is now in the public domain, Brexit will hit growth by up to 8% over the next 15 years, and a free trade deal with America would only add 0.2% to growth over the same period, which backs up what Chris Patten has been saying. So the sums don't add up. And what makes you think you know more about economics than both the civil service and the IFS?
Oh, well, I'm very happy to say that most people know more than the Treasury, which got it so catastrophically wrong before the referendum. The Treasury said there would be up to 800,000 job losses purely on a vote to leave. This was nonsense. This was Project Fear. And the Treasury, having been humiliated by the errors of its pre-Brexit vote forecasts, has then made even worse forecasts subsequently. And in that paper, it did not even consider, it did not evaluate, it made no estimates for the government's preferred option by way of the deal that we would have. So it was a worthless paper. And there are many better economists and professional economists, not like me, I accept that I am not a professional economist, who believe that we will have very significant advantages if we embrace free trade.
What do you say to Chris Patten's assertion, which is actually factually correct in the sense that there is no technological solution to the border issue in Ireland that currently exists?
Well, there's a border in Ireland already, but there are different rates of VAT, there are different rates of
Sure, but when we come out of the EU, where else in the world, Jacob Rees-Mogg, is there a technological solution?
Like Magnus Magnusson, I've started, so I'll finish. There is already a border But it is a soft border, and it is perfectly possible to have a border that is implemented remotely. When people talk about a hard border, what they mean are people in peaked caps and barriers going up and down. You do not need those. You can have tariffs, if there are any, paid in the same way as VAT. You can have inspections for health reasons of food going back and forth at the site of production on behalf of the country that they are going to. All of this is perfectly feasible. So the question is, do you need people in peaked caps and infrastructure at the border, to which the answer is no. Will there be a change? Yes, of course there will, and everybody accepts that.
Right. Where else does that exist in the world?
Where else does what exist in the world?
Having a technological solution so that you can have an invisible border without the men and women in peak caps.
Well, just because something isn't there currently doesn't mean it's impossible to do. And in fact, it's really easy. But if you've got historic border structures, you have to remember that the tendency is to leave them there. So it's a new structure, but it's a very easily deliverable one. And if you want an example where there's no border at all, there's one between the EU and the Vatican. But as the Vatican is not huge, I don't think that necessarily counts.
Not huge, that is an understatement there. I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Chris Patten echoed...
It's very important
well,
in many
but we were
ways,
talking about
not
size
huge.
there. Chris Patten echoed John Major in saying there should be a free vote in Parliament. Would you support that?
Did Lord Patten support free votes when he was chairman of the Conservative Party? Conservatives stood on a manifesto saying that they would implement the referendum and that we would leave the single market and the customs union. If you have said to your voters that that is what you will do, in honour you owe it to them to deliver on that. If any MP at the last election said that they disagreed with that and put out a private election address, then that's a different matter. But the overall Conservative manifesto was absolutely clear, and those of us who were elected as Conservatives must stick to what we have promised to the electorate. To behave otherwise would be improper.